question number 21. So question number 21 wants you to solve the absolute value equation, all right? So first things first, you need to know what an absolute value is. So absolute value are these two lines that you see on the outside of this x, all right? So absolute value turns whatever is inside of that absolute value into a positive number, all right? You cannot apply the absolute value to a negative result, all right? So I'm going to show you what that means, all right? So whenever you're doing absolute value, this is what you need to remember, all right? It's telling you to solve, and what does it mean when it says to solve? Solve means that you're finding x's, all right? In this case, guys, whenever you're solving an absolute value equation, you'll end up having two x's or two answers, all right? So again, guys, for both of these equations, you're going to end up having how many answers? Two answers, all right? So let's go ahead and try to solve what this equation is asking me to do, all right? So I'm going to first rewrite my equation just so I can look at it a little bit more clearly, okay? So I rewrite that equation just to look at it a little bit more clearly, all right? So the question wants us to solve. So the aim is to find x. When you're finding x, the aim is to firstly locate x. So is x on the left side or on the right side? It's on the left side of my equal sign, all right? So the aim is to find this x, so I need to move things away from it. So a lot of times I'll cover up the x so I can see what I need to move away from it, all right? So I would need to move away the 3, the 9, the negative sign that's in front of here, which is technically a -1, all right, and the -7. Those are all the things I would need to move away from my x, all right? The furthest thing that's away from my x is the number that's not attached or has anything to do with your absolute value, and that's going to be this -7, all right? This -1 is inside the absolute value, same as this 9, and this 3 is attached to the absolute value. So this -7 is the furthest thing that is technically away from the absolute value, all right? So to move away a -7, I would need to firstly add 7 to both sides of my equations, all right? This would get canceled, all right? And my 3 absolute value, 9 minus 1x absolute value, I would bring down. 2 plus 7 is 9, all right? Now I see that attached to this absolute value is a 3. So I need to get rid of that 3 that's attached to the absolute value first before I can go inside of the absolute value. Whenever you see something attached, you know you're multiplying, all right? So to get rid of this multiplying by 3, I would divide by 3, and I have to do the same thing on the other side. So the 3's are gone, and I'm left with absolute value 9 minus 1x, absolute value, all right, is equal to 9 divided by 3, which is 3, okay? And this is what you want to do, guys. You want to get it where the absolute value is all by itself, all right, where there's no number in front or no number behind of it, okay? Now you're going to apply absolute value, all right? So when you apply absolute values, again, now we're going to apply absolute value, okay? When you do that, you're stating that your 9 minus 1x could be equal to a positive 3, or your 9 minus 1x could be a -3. So that is what you're stating when you apply your absolute value, all right? So let's go ahead and let's try to find my values of x. So the first thing I would need to do is move this positive 9 to the other side by subtracting 9 on both sides of my equations. This gets canceled, and my -1x I bring down, okay? 3 minus 9 is negative 6. Now I will divide both sides by negative 1, divide by negative 1. So my x will be equal to negative 6 divided by negative 1, and negative divided by negative gives me a positive 6. Alright? So your first value of x is positive 6. Okay? So now let's get the second value of x. Okay? So again, I will subtract 9, cancels out, bring down my negative 1x, equal to negative 3 minus 9 is negative 12. Then I divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. So your x is equal to negative 12 divided by negative 1 is positive 12. Alright? So again, your x would be positive 6 and positive 12. Alright? So let's try to do the next question. Alright? So the first things first, guys, I'm going to rewrite my question just to look at it a little bit more clearly. Okay? So I don't get confused at what I'm looking at. Okay? So the question tells you to solve. Solve means that you're finding x's. Alright? Because I see absolute values, how many answers should I have? 2 answers. Alright? Just like how I've had 2 answers here. You'll always have 2 answers. Alright? So the aim is to find x. So to find x, I would need to get rid of a few things that's attached to x. So I would need to get rid of this 10, this 5, this other 5 that's on the outside of the absolute value, and the 2. What would you think I would need to get rid of first? The furthest thing that's away from my x, which is this 2. Because again, this 10 is inside the absolute value, so it's trapped on the inside. The same as this 5 that's attached to x. This 5 is attached to the absolute value, so the 2 is the furthest thing away. So to move a positive 2 that's not attached to anything, you subtract 2. So I need to do the same thing on the other side of the equal sign. That gets cancelled, alright? And my 5 absolute value, 5x plus 10 absolute value, my couple, I bring down. 52 minus 2 is 50. Okay? However, I see something attached to this absolute value. So I can't do anything until I get rid of anything that's attached. Alright? To break up this attachment, alright? Again, to break up a multiply, you divide. So I'm going to break up this by dividing by 5, dividing by 5. And now I have absolute value 5x plus 10 absolute value, which is what I wanted. I wanted to get the absolute value all by itself, okay? So 50 divided by 5 is 10, all right? Now that I have the absolute value all by itself, now I'm going to apply it, okay? So I'm going to apply absolute value, all right? So when I apply that absolute value, I'm stating that 5x plus 10 could be equal to a positive 10. What else am I stating? I'm also stating that 5x plus 10 could be a negative 10. So those are the things that I'm stating, all right? So that's what the absolute value means, that this 10 could be a positive 10, or this 10 could be a negative 10 that's on the other side of the equal sign, all right? The same way how this 3 could be a positive 3 or a negative 3. So that's what the absolute value means, all right? That your result could be a positive number or a negative number, all right? So to find x right here, I would subtract 10, that gets canceled. The 5x, I would bring it down, because again, to find your value of x, you're trying to isolate x. So I would need to subtract 10 first. 10 minus 10 is 0. Now, I will break up this attachment by dividing by 5, dividing by 5. But we know that 0 divided by any number is still 0. So one of my first answer is 0. So let's get our next one. So here, again, you need to find x. So I would need to get rid of the positive 10 that's right here by subtracting 10. Do the same thing on the other side. That gets canceled. And we end up having 5x is equal to negative 10 minus 10 gives me negative 20. Then I divide by 5, so your x is equal to negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Alright, so my two values of x's are 0 and negative 4. So again guys, just like that.